Kyle Filipowski is coming back. He will be a Duke Blue Devil for one more season at least, and we're so fired up about that. Another recruiting news that took us by surprise. We discuss all of that on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. Let's go!
Hi, everybody. Dick Vitale. Hey, make sure you listen, man, to Locked On Blue Devils with JJ Jackson. He's awesome, baby.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is JJ Jackson. So great to have you here with us on this Wednesday, April 12th, 2023. So excited to bring you a new episode of Locked On Blue Devils, where we talk everything going on in the life of Duke athletics each and every day. If you haven't done so already, please be sure to follow us wherever you get your podcasts. Leave us a 5-star rating and review. Watch our show daily on YouTube, wherever you see the podcast. Make sure you support it. Your support means the absolute world to us. You can also follow us on Twitter at LO_Blue Devils. And I'm on Twitter at _JJ_Jackson_. Kyle Filipowski announced yesterday that he will return to Duke for his sophomore season. Significant news for the future of Duke men's basketball. A recruiting development that we'll get into in a little bit as well. And of course, who better to break it down with me today than my good pal, Jason Evans, longtime Duke basketball podcaster. And Jason, it's so great to have you back here with us. Hope you're doing well, my friend.
Yeah, thanks, man. This was a truly crazy morning yesterday morning for Duke news. We got the hint that Mackenzie Mgbako wasn't coming back, and then almost immediately we got the news that Kyle Filipowski was coming back, and then we got confirmation that Mgbako was gone. It's like, whoa, just huge news in terms of the makeup of the Duke roster for next year. That just came flying out of nowhere.
Yeah, I mean, we teased it all week. It felt like Kyle Filipowski was teasing it at times as well. Duke Twitter fell in love with 10:38 a.m. Eastern time. Who knew that people would find such fond memories of that timestamp? And a little bit before that, Kyle Filipowski, of course, released the video that he would be returning for his sophomore season. On Monday, he puts out a tweet saying, hold on, I could be having something to announce here soon. And the announcement, of course, is that he's coming back for his sophomore season. This is a significant get for Duke's team going into next season, right?
Yeah, no, there's no way to overstate this. I mean, look, as excited as we were about Tyrese Proctor and Mark Mitchell, as significant as those returns are, and make no mistake, those are big-time, very important developments for Duke basketball. This is even bigger. Kyle Filipowski was Duke's best player. He was one of the best players in the ACC. He was, everyone says, the second best freshman in all of college basketball last year. Getting him back for his sophomore year when the best freshman, Brandon Miller, is leaving. Well, I mean, everyone would tell you Duke has the best sophomore in all of college basketball next year. I think you will see Kyle Filipowski, if not on first-team All-American preseason lists, certainly on second-team preseason All-American lists. The expectations are that this guy will be one of the dominant big men in the game. And I got a question for you, JJ. Do you know the answer? When was the last time an ACC Rookie of the Year returned for his sophomore season? Do you know the answer to this?
I saw this earlier. I know the year is 2013, but for some reason the name is blanking. It was in the moment here.
It was Olivier Hanlon.
That's right.
Of Boston College, 2013. That's a
decade ago. Yeah,
that's a decade. That's a decade ago. We have been through 10 years of the changing face of college basketball since the last time an ACC Rookie of the Year returned. It's just a huge deal for Duke to be getting a guy like this back.
That's crazy to think about. It's been that long since someone just came back for their sophomore season. That was significant as a freshman. Everyone else, of course, starting their professional career. So Filip is coming back for another season. Big news for Duke, of course, 16 double-doubles this year. And it's wild because you go into this past season, so many people wanted to talk about Dariq Whitehead and Derek Lively II, and yet we end the year and the freshman we care the most about is Kyle Filipowski.
Yeah, and it's a colleague of mine, Sam Klein, was saying that this may be the most surprising. He may have had the most surprising freshman season of any freshman in Duke basketball history, and Sam is absolutely right about that. Our expectations for Kyle Filipowski were that he was going to play multiple years at Duke because no one thought he'd be good enough to be a one and done player. And as recently as I would say October, November, even early November, I think, just before the start of the season, even the exhibition games, it wasn't like he looked awesome in the exhibition games. We were getting word that, Duke thought he was a little soft in practice and, having a little trouble with the speed of the game and that kind of stuff. And then suddenly he comes out and like literally in Duke's first 4 or 5 games, you're like, okay, well, this is the best player in the team. We're building the team around this guy. To get that guy back, I mean, are you kidding me? Come on. It's the other guys. If you look, at Duke over the past decade or so, where we've been in this one and done era, the other guys who've come back from freshman to sophomore year haven't had anywhere close to the season that Kyle Filipowski had. It's Mark Williams, who came on strong late, but certainly wasn't an impact player for the majority of that season. It's Luke Kennard, who struggled so much with his shot as a freshman and then really developed as a sophomore. It's Grayson Allen, who played a fairly minor role on that team throughout the majority of the year until coming on late in the season.
Right.
But Kyle Filipowski, literally from like Duke's first game, has been their best player. It's amazing that we're getting him back.
And he's coming back for another year. That's outstanding. Can't wait to see what he's going to look like another season. He talks in his video about making a promise to help, put in place the John Shire era of Duke basketball. And so as you look at him getting set for this upcoming season, where do you want to see Filipowski improve, Jason?
Well, I feel like there are 4 arenas where I want to see.
All right, let's go for it.
Yeah, you ready? Okay, so number 1 is physical. And by that, I mean he needs to get stronger, needs to be not pushed around as much, and he also needs to get a little bit quicker. Now, this is both for him at the college level and at the pro level. Kyle Filipowski wants to play and is going to play mostly power forward, the 4 at Duke and at the pro level. He's just not I know there are people out there who want to put him at the 5. That's not where his game is best suited, I believe, at the college level or at the pro level.
Yeah.
So if he's going to play the 4, he needs to be able to guard opposing 4s and maybe even being switched onto 3s, or, if they're screen kind of situations switching, he needs to get a little bit quicker. So number 1 is get stronger and get quicker. And by the way, that will help him with fouls. If he's a little bit stronger, he'll be able to stand up to guys in the post when he's being backed down and the such, and not commit fouls. Area number 2, I want to see him in the post more than we saw last year. Let's not forget, despite all his great perimeter skills, Kyle Filipowski is 7 feet tall. He's mostly in the college level. He's being guarded by guys who are 6'7", 6'8", maybe a 6'9" guy. Yep. He's going to have multiple inches on everyone who guards him, and he needs to use the post a little bit more. We saw it at times this past year. I want it to become an even bigger part of his game, taking guys inside and punishing them for being smaller than him. Area number 3, this is going to seem like a weird one. His usage rate last year, the amount of times that Duke ended a possession with Kyle Filipowski taking a shot, making a turnover, that kind of thing, was close to 30%, 28.8%. I want to see that come down. I think Duke is a better team next year if Kyle Filipowski isn't taking quite as much of an offensive burden on himself. And the numbers I'd like to see change as a result of that usage rate. I want his assist number to go up a little bit. He only averaged about 1.5 assists per game. If he can get that above 2, maybe to 2.5 or 3 even, that says the ball's in his hands, but he's moving it around to his teammates a little bit better than he did this past year. And then the last place, area number 4, you can probably guess it, JJ. Dude shot less than 30% from 3. He has a really good-looking stroke. He clearly is comfortable taking 3-point shots. We saw him at times get hot, but we also saw him be very, very cold for most of the season. I think for his development, both as a college player and especially for the NBA, they're going to want to see him getting to 35, 38% from 3-point range. If he shows that, then he goes from being, this year he would have been picked in the 20s, late first round pick. He goes to being a guy who gets potentially into the lottery. And then the money that he's somewhat giving up this year, you forget about that, because the salary of guys who get picked in the lottery is so much higher than late first round picks. he makes up for any lost money he had this year from coming back almost instantly.
The college basketball world should be a little scared because Kyle Filipowski is going to get better as a sophomore, as will the other sophomores returning to Duke. A really loaded freshman class coming in as well.
Yeah, and by the way, so I got another question for you. I asked you the last time there was an ACC Rookie of the Year who returned. When was the last time Duke returned 3 starters? We absolutely returned 3 starters this year. Can you guess the last time Duke returned 3 starters?
Now, this is a thought exercise, Jason. You're going to have to help me out here. It's been a while. It's got to have been a while.
Yeah, so technically you could maybe say it's 2015 because Quinn Cook, Rashid Suleiman, and Emil Jefferson, they've all been kind of like part-time, sort of mini. But I don't think that's really – they weren't full – none of those guys were like full-time starters the way Proctor, Mitchell, and Flip are. You got to go back to 2013. Mason Plumlee, Seth Curry, Ryan Kelly. All 3 of those guys had been starters virtually every game on the 2012 team, came back in 2013. That's a decade. Again, It's been a decade since Duke has brought back this many starters. And the significant thing to me is that most years, like I went back and looked at every year, you're bringing back like 1, maybe 2. Like this year, Jeremy Roach was it. 2022, Wendell Moore and Jeremy Roach, who'd both been kind of part-time starters as freshmen. But, so I guess that's 1.5. But most years it's like, you're bringing back 1 guy, Trey Jones, Matthew Hurt and Wendell Moore a little bit, Grayson Allen, maybe Luke Kennard. For the most part, that's it in terms of guys who returned, who were starters. And now we're bringing back 3, maybe 4, because I'm telling you, Jeremy Roach has not decided to enter the NBA draft yet. I mean, to stay in the NBA draft.
Again, it's going to be a really dangerous Duke basketball team, and we'll continue to talk about them after our first time out here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. There is no better place to be betting on Major League Baseball action than FanDuel. Grand slams, no-hitters, and double plays are back, and that's because right now new customers can step up to the plate with a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon, sign up, place your first bet, and get up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if the first bet doesn't win. So don't miss your chance to get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 when you join FanDuel today. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. FanDuel is the official partner of Major League Baseball. Moving forward here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils, JJ Jackson alongside my pal Jason Evans. And Jason, we get a lot of news yesterday. We see that Kyle Filipowski has announced that he is going to return for his sophomore season. But then we also find out that Mackenzie Mgbako is no longer going to be a part of this Duke freshman recruiting class.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll be honest with your listeners, with your viewers. This was not something that was really out there very much immediately prior to it being announced, unless you're someone who knows me. I had some sources who told me that this was coming down the line, and I got to tell you, I went to some other folks who follow Duke basketball closely, who were connected to the team, and people were like, "What? No, I hadn't." Like this came out of the blue to a lot of people. I truly think that this is a situation where Mackenzie Imbacco and Duke both recognize that maybe they weren't a good fit for each other anymore. And by that, I mean, Mackenzie Mgbako is the kind of player who needs the ball in his hands a lot. He's the kind of player who probably expects to and affects the game best when he's in the game for long stretches of time. Not a guy who, let's bring him in for 4 minutes, instant offense off the bench, 4 minutes, and then you're out. I think Mackenzie Mgbako needs to be a ball-dominant player who is playing significant minutes. I'm not sure that was available with the nature of the Duke roster next year. I think that in all likelihood, if he'd come to Duke, he was probably going to be backing up a combination of Mark Mitchell and Kyle Filipowski. Well, JJ, how many minutes do you think there are backing up Mark Mitchell and Kyle Filipowski? Maybe 20? Maybe? Right. I think it's probably even less than 20. So if you're Mackenzie Imbacco and you're expecting to be a one-and-done player, you're one of the top 10 players and the top 5 players in the class, a guy who's considered a elite outside scorer, you've just got to be playing more than I think Duke was able to offer to him. And again, I want to be clear. I don't think that was necessarily only Mackenzie Mgbako saying, this isn't for me. I think Duke recognized that this may not be the greatest fit in terms of what the team needs. Look, you can try and stack your team with as many superstars as you can get, but sometimes it's better to say maybe less is a little bit more.
Yeah. No, we've seen that for sure, where Duke just stacks as loaded of a roster as possible. But Mackenzie Imbacco posting that after long thought, prayers, and discussions with my parents and trusted advisors, I'm writing to formally request a release from my NLI to Duke University. While I have great appreciation and respect for the Duke coaching staff and fans for their interest in me, I feel that there will be other places for me to continue my basketball journey. So I will be reopening the recruiting process to all schools, sending a big thanks to all my supporters, friends, and family for continuing to show love. That's what Mackenzie Imbacco posted. And Jason, most notably, he was very, very recently competing with other future Duke Blue Devils in Jared McCain and Sean Stewart at not only the McDonald's All-American game, but the Nike Hoop Summit as well.
Yeah, and look, I'm not saying this because he's not coming to Duke. He looked terrible at the McDonald's All-American game. He didn't score very much. He wasn't even looking to score that much. His defense was disinterested. At the Nike Hoop Summit was a whole different story. He was the leading scorer on both teams, scored 22 points. Wasn't the most efficient, scoring performance. Right. He got to the free throw line a lot, and I love the fact that he got to the free throw line. But he took some less than high percentage shots, and that's a lot of what Mackenzie Mbacko's game is. He again wasn't playing particularly inspired defense, but I think those are the kind of things that guys learn when they get on campus. It's tough to play defense in these all-star games with a team where you've only been together for a few days. But no, he's clearly a really, really good player. We're hearing lots of talk that Louisville, that Nolan Smith may be really involved with him. I've heard some rumblings that Rick Pitino at St. John's may try and get in on Mackenzie Mgbako. And then there's obviously talk about him potentially going one of the, so-called professional routes, which would be like the G League Ignite or OTE.
Yep. Options for sure for Mackenzie Mgbako, and we'll see where he ends up. We just know that Duke University is no longer going to be that stop. Jason, you've spent so many days and years and hours talking about Duke basketball. Tell me a little bit about the podcast adventures you guys are always on, because I love when you and Donald in particular stop by here on this program.
Thank you. We enjoy hanging out with you, JJ, for sure. Yeah. So we used to be the Duke Basketball Report. We're now the Duke Basketball Roundup. We had a separation from SB Nation, which owns the name Duke Basketball Report. We asked all our listeners to send us suggestions. We wanted to keep the initials DBR.
Right.
And we got a ton of great ideas. We almost went with Duke Basketball Review, and then it was pointed out to me that we don't just review, we look ahead. So Duke Basketball Roundup is where we eventually landed on the name. It really, frankly, for the audience, nothing has changed. Like we still have the feed, and so everyone who used to get it still gets it. Everyone who subscribed still gets an issue of it. But we're excited to be in a new home, so to speak. And nothing bad to say about SB Nation. Our parting was quite amicable.
Yeah, I love that. And then, as you said, the feed is the same, so it's available wherever you get your podcast.
No one noticed. The only
same
difference
voices.
The only difference is that we say DBR Duke Basketball Roundup instead of DBR Duke Basketball Report. And by the way, we've already made the mistake and continue to call it the Duke Basketball Report numerous times.
Yeah, I think you probably have a few more mistakes left in you with how much that's been ingrained in your brain over the years, for sure. So, looking at Duke basketball now over the next few weeks, Jeremy Roach is in the draft process now. We got the Filipowski decision. That was one that we were waiting for. It appears, in terms of someone like Jalen Blakes or Jaden Shute, Christian Reeves, really quiet from those guys. We are in a day and age where people are speculating them to make decisions at what their future could hold. But when we look at the roster for next year, what kind of an impact do these recent moves have?
So I'll tell you that first of all, I think that probably most of the guys you just mentioned will be coming back to Duke. There's been some scuttlebutt about perhaps there could be one player who enters the transfer portal, But I think for the most part, when you look at, the attrition that other teams see, I don't think you're going to see anything like that at Duke. And it is a great testament to the relationship that John Shire and his coaching staff has with the players, to the way they have guided these players about what the expectations are for them, and to what the players feel about how they're being developed. That you're probably not going to see guys who you may look at it and go, oh, that guy's he's a sophomore now, he's a junior now, and we're still not seeing a path to big minutes. These guys understand that there's a role for them to play, and they're comfortable with that role. So it's a real testament, I think, to the program. I think the biggest impact on the roster, aside obviously from Filipowski coming back, which again we kind of had hints about for weeks, is the Mgbako news. And I actually think there's a very interesting development here with Mackenzie Mgbako, in that he was going to demand minutes because he's such a highly touted prospect. We already talked, JJ, about the fact that there are sort of limited minutes available at those forward positions. In addition to Mackenzie Imbacco and Mark Mitchell and Kyle Filipowski, Duke's got a couple other forward big men type guys on the roster who were going to, I think, get really squeezed. TJ Power and Sean Stewart.
And
both those
freshmen,
guys. Yeah, both incoming freshmen, both 5-star freshmen. Sean Stewart, as you mentioned, McDonald's All-American, Nike Hoop Summit. TJ Power just barely, sort of ranking-wise, just behind those guys. Like, he's top 30, but not top 20. So he's not on all these big all-star teams. But people are really high on TJ Power. By the way, TJ Power is a guy who has a reputation as someone who works super hard, does whatever you need to win, and has a great outside shot for a big man. Really great. Like, arguably up there with McCain as going to be the best shooter on the Duke team next year, and Jaden Shoot. So super excited about that. Anyway, my theory,
plug the great fastball that TJ Power has.
TJ Power is also is a two-sport athlete and a hell of a pitcher. No, so I was thinking about Mackenzie Mgbako and the fact that Duke has lost him for his one-and-done season. And I thought about it this way. This probably allows Duke to get some minutes, to get some experience for TJ Power and Sean Stewart. So maybe, and look, I'm not saying this is an absolute trade, but maybe what we've sort of done is we've traded 1 year of Mackenzie Mgbako, one and done, traded 1 year of Mackenzie Mgbako for, I don't know, 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe 7 years of TJ Power and Sean Stewart. Because those guys, the fact that I think they are now going to get some meaningful time next year could do wonders for their development and for how they feel about their role at Duke moving forward.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good point to be made. Their development is going to be so crucial. And if you get those guys for multiple seasons, it's just something that we're not used to seeing. So here we are, as you mentioned, 3 sophomores coming back that played meaningful minutes. Let's talk about those other 2 guys coming back, Jason, and Tyrese Proctor and Mark Mitchell, those decisions that were made by those 2 players coming back.
Well, look, Tyrese Proctor, by the end of the season, looked like a guy who...
I love that guy.
Yeah, looked like a guy who was in charge of the game. He was a quintessential point guard, setting other players up, getting his own shot, playing great defense. God, if you don't love the way Tyrese Proctor fights through screens and plays hard defense, then, I don't want to watch basketball with you because you don't know what you're looking at. I love the development that guy had late in the year. Let's not forget, he came to Duke a year early. I mean, technically, Tyrese Proctor, sophomore year, will be what was supposed to be his freshman year.
Right.
There's already talk that Tyrese Proctor, the 2024 draft class, the next year's draft class, is thought to be not nearly as strong as the current 2023 class. And there's already talk that Tyrese Proctor is going to be in the running to be a top 5 pick in the 2024 draft. Look, I want to be clear about something. As a Duke fan, great that those guys are high draft picks, but you want them to perform in college as well.
Yeah.
And I think that Tyrese Proctor is poised to have a really great season. I had someone say to me today, they were like, so who's going to get more National Player of the Year votes next year, Kyle Filipowski or Tyrese Proctor? And I was like, well, preseason is going to be Filipowski. Postseason, end of the year, it might be Tyrese Proctor. And then great. Mark Mitchell, every team needs a glue guy. Every team needs a guy who's going to do the dirty work for you. Every team needs a guy who is just a lockdown defender. JJ, did you follow? I'm not sure if you and I talked about this. Mark Mitchell's ability to defend and not foul. Have you heard about this? So go look at your advanced stats. Mark Mitchell is like one of the 5 best players in the country at fouls per minute, like percentage of the number of times he commits a foul. He does that while being one of the best defenders on the floor. That's like unheard of. You tell me a guy's
asked to work a lot. Yeah.
You tell me a guy's a great defender. I'm thinking, oh, he probably is going to commit fouls every now and then. Mark Mitchell somehow is an incredible defender who doesn't foul. I mean, I don't even know how it's possible.
That's awesome.
It's really it's an amazing thing, and having him back, because I think we're going to see some real advancement in his offense. I'm here to admit I was a little bit down on Mark Mitchell, entering February, through January, entering February.
We all were.
Yeah, I'm like, this guy, he just didn't score. I was like, okay, he plays some good defense, but he just doesn't score at all. And literally, I went on my podcast, I went on the Duke Basketball Roundup, and I said, I don't think Mark Mitchell should be starting anymore. This is the first week of February. I was like, I think that it's time for Whitehead to move into the starting lineup. Literally, I said it. The next game, the guy went on an 8-game double-digit scoring streak.
Yep.
So he really improved as the year went on. Look, you want him to work on that 3-point shot. That is a flat-looking shot.
It was going in for a large portion of the year.
Yeah. It is not the way you want a shot to look. So I talked about the things I want Kyle Filipowski to work on this summer. If Kyle's going to be out there shooting 500 threes a day to get better at that, Mark Mitchell should be right next to him in line.
Yeah, they'll be shooting them together. That's for sure. I love it. Well, we talk about this Duke team going into next season and the freshman class coming in set to make an impact as well. A big difference for John Shire going to year 2. One, you've got this first year under your belt, but you also have way more experience coming back than you did this season when it was just Jeremy Roach. And then, there's Jalen Blakes a little bit as well. I think that there's a big impact to be made by Proctor, Filipowski, Mitchell, those players on their teammates coming in to help kind of advance Duke basketball.
Yeah, what does it take to be a Duke player? What do you face in games as a Duke player when you go play on the road in the ACC or any place else?
Yeah.
These are things that you can talk about, but the fact that those guys have done it is a huge, huge leg up. Every year, one of the things that we, on the Duke Basketball Roundup, one of the things we talk about is how many road games will Duke win this year? Because it's so hard for freshmen, which is Duke is almost always relying on freshmen. It's so hard for freshmen to understand the amount of intensity, the amount of focus, what it takes to win on the road, especially in the ACC. Well, now we've got 3 guys coming back who understand it already. They've been through it.
Yep.
They've been the focus of the opposing team's attack and the opposing fans' attacks. So it's going to be immeasurably different, I think. And I strongly suspect that this Duke team will get off to a very, very fast start. In recent years, we've seen Duke teams maybe struggle a little bit early in the year. Look, this past season, there's no question. Look, back in January, there were people who were like, is this Duke team even going to make the tournament? And the way they came on, they were one of the tournament favorites by the time they reached the postseason, even though it didn't work out. But I think you're going to see something very different, at least out of the gates, because it's going to be such an experienced team.
All right, so last thoughts here. We've got the transfer portal in place, of course, trying to figure out what other players could join this Duke team for next year's roster. Those questions are set to be answered. We're in a day that news comes each and every day, it feels like, when you take a look at next year's team. But it does look, Jason, for the most part, like the coaching carousel has sort of settled a little bit. This is the time of year you always wonder if assistant coaches are going to get opportunities elsewhere and that sort of thing. And something that we're not spending a whole lot of time talking about is it does feel like the Duke coaching staff altogether will be returning for another season. And that continuity is really important as well.
Yeah, and I love that Jai Lucas is back, or appears to be. Yeah, I think he probably will be. I love that he's going to get a second year, because just like the freshmen were learning what it's like to be at Duke and what it's like to be in the ACC and all that other stuff,
he is as well.
Jai Lucas was learning that well. I really feel he's a very experienced, and I really like comes from elsewhere from multiple other programs. So he just has different experiences. The other guys in the Duke bench have been there alongside Jon Scheyer. They've been part of the Duke program. They sort of okay, they know the way Duke does things. I'm not saying that the way Duke does things isn't the right way, but having an outside opinion, having someone else who can say, oh, what if we try this? That's what we did at Kentucky. Right. That's what we did. That's what my dad did at Maryland, whatever else it may be. It's a nice bonus. And yeah, I agree with you. It looks like the entire roster of assistant coaches is probably back. And I think that's a really good thing for Duke.
Your excitement level for Duke basketball as we close out today, Jason, your excitement level for Duke basketball, just a message to Duke fans about what to expect here. Way early thoughts on next year's team, but where are you at here today in the middle of April?
I will tell you that the thing I'm looking forward to that I hope we're going to see is as deep a Duke team as we've had in many years. And we got hints of that a little bit this year from Jon Scheyer. He seemed willing to go 8, sometimes 9.
Yeah.
Not really 10, but he got to 9 at times. And look, we were dealing with injuries, so that impacted some of it. But I really am hoping when you look at this roster, even without Mackenzie Mgbako, I think that it is a roster that can go comfortably 10 deep. And I'm hoping that we're going to see that from Jon Scheyer. I want to be clear that I want Kyle Filipowski, Tyrese Proctor, Mark Mitchell. I want those guys playing 30 minutes a game, but I want other guys really getting out there, putting pressure on the opposition and just being dangerous in the 10 minutes or so that those other guys get, because I think that could be, look, you don't want your team to wear down. You want your team to wear down the opposition. I think Duke has a real chance to do that this upcoming season. And by the way, you mentioned transfers earlier. There's no question in my mind that this staff is looking in the transfer portal. There are several names that we've heard of big men. The roster isn't done. They're going to be adding at least one more big man, a 5, probably a 5 that they expect to start and play at least around 20 minutes or so per game. And it's possible that they're going to look to add another player as well, just because Jon Scheyer wants a roster that is full of guys who can contribute and help this team.
Amen. Yeah, absolutely love it. Jason Evans from the Duke Basketball Roundup, DBR. One more time, give me a plug for the show, Jason.
Yeah, so all you have to do is search for Duke Basketball Roundup on Twitter or any place else. The podcast is there and coming at you. I
love it.
These days, coming at you 5 times a week.
That is awesome. A lot of things to discuss for sure. Jason, we'll do this again soon, okay?
Thanks, my friend.
That's Jason Evans from Duke Basketball Roundup joining us here on today's show. And that's going to do it for our program today. Thanks for your support as always. Follow us on Twitter at LO_Blue Devils. Subscribe on YouTube and also leave us a 5-star rating on your podcast platform as well. That'll do it for today's show. As always, go Duke. I'll talk to you tomorrow. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.